prove to the establishment that the concentration camp technique, the reversion to the second dimension of fascism, the terrorist phase, but to prove that this terrorism won't work on us, it won't stop our movement.
The BGF oath, Weusi Gaidi Jama, that means Black Guerrilla Family. If I should break my stride or falter at my comrade's side, this oath shall kill me. If my words should prove untrue, should I betray the chosen few, this oath shall kill me. Should I submit to greed or lust, should I betray the people's trust, this oath shall kill me. Should I grow lax in discipline, in time of strife refuse my hand, this oath shall kill me. Should I fear any man or be slow to take a stand, this oath shall kill me. Long live the spirit of George Lester Jackson and the guerrillas of Black August, Weusi Gaidi Jama.
Greetings and salutations. Once again, it's your host, Gabe Morales, returning for our series on Black Guerrilla family members and associates over the past 6 decades or so. Women have been a part of the struggle since the early days of the BGF. Women would often visit members, write to them about revolutionary thoughts and love poems, send care packages, and put money on their books. While Jackson is said to have compared Huey Newton to Mao in his book, in private, he viewed him as having lumpen element tendencies, who used drugs and abused women, was rumored to have betrayed the revolution and let down his little brother, Jonathan Jackson. He did hold the highest respect for Angela Davis. Angela Yvonne Davis was born in 1944 in Birmingham, Alabama. In college, she became increasingly engaged in far-left politics, became part of the feminist movement, and joined the campaign against the Vietnam War. In 1969, she was hired as assistant professor of philosophy at the University of California in Los Angeles, commonly known as UCLA. But it is my understanding that the Board of Regents soon fired her due to her membership in the Communist Party USA. After a court ruling ruled that reason illegal, the university stated that they fired her for the use of inflammatory language. Angela was known to have communicated often with George Jackson. Some even stated that they were lovers. And she was well aware of his books and efforts at prison reform. Guns belonging to Davis were tracked back to the armed takeover of the courtroom in Marin County, California, in August of 1970, in which 4 people were killed, including Jonathan Jackson. One of those weapons, including a shotgun used to shoot and kill Judge Harold Haley, were tracked back to Davis, and it later was determined that it had been sawed off for better concealment by Jonathan Jackson when he took over the courthouse and attempted to flee with Black Panther and BGF prisoners, with the judge, prosecutor, and jury members being taken as hostages in exchange for his brother George and the Soledad brothers. Soon after the news came out, Davis became a fugitive and fled California. She was found a couple months later in a Howard Johnson motel lodge in New York City. President Richard M. Nixon then congratulated the FBI on its capture of the dangerous terrorist Angela Davis. Davis was prosecuted for 3 capital felonies, including conspiracy to murder. In 1971, Davis appeared at the Marin County Superior Court and declared her innocence. All across the nation, many people started organizing a movement to gain her release. Even John Lennon and Yoko Ono contributed to this campaign with their song Angela. In 1972, after a 16-month incarceration, the state allowed her release on bail from the county jail. Then, after a change of venue was granted and the trial was moved to Santa Clara County, in June of 1972, an all-white jury returned a verdict of not guilty. They stated that the fact that she owned the guns used in the crime was judged to be insufficient to establish any role she had in the plot.
Because they're black. And I think a brother during the Attica Rebellion sort of expressed this whole thing when he was asked by a reporter what he was charged with. And he said he was charged with being black. That's why he was there. And coupled with the oppression that leads black people and brown people, people of color, into the jails and prisons of this country, has been a new kind of political awareness that has spread all over the jails and prisons throughout the country. When George Jackson, and Fleeta Drumgo, and John Clouchet, and Ruchell McGee, I could go on and on to name the sisters and brothers who have achieved a political awareness and a political commitment behind the walls.
After acquittal, Davis went on an international speaking tour, including a trip to Cuba, and she also visited the former Soviet Union, as well as other countries. Davis became a frequent lecturer and often was seen on the talk circuit, including Seattle, Washington. The reason I'm including her here is not because she ever was a member of the BGF, but she was said to be a supporter or associate of George Jackson. And so people can make up their own minds. Some people hate Angela Davis, some love her for fighting for human rights. So some view her as an icon of black liberation. There was a Ronald Davis from San Diego, CDC number V as in Victor, 72307. I understand that he was a very prolific bank robber and became known as the taxicab bandit due to the nature of his escapes. After robbing several Chula Vista banks in the San Diego area, he often used a taxicab to flee the scene. He robbed around a half dozen banks in Chula Vista and San Diego before he was caught during his last robbery. The very same day, FBI agents served a search warrant at his house where they found disguises and stolen currency. Davis later pled guilty to 8 felony robbery counts. And in September 2011, he was sentenced to 94 years and 8 months. I show that he entered CDC in October 2011, I believe it at the CIM Reception Center. And I show he was housed in New Folsom Beef Facility in 2018 when he was involved in a stabbing incident with the shank showed here. I show he was housed at Wasco in 2024, but it appears he was sent back to the George Bailey Detention Center in San Diego for court due to a recent writ of habeas corpus. There was Shannon Heshima Denham, who's also from San Diego, who had J numbers in John 38283. I show he entered CDC in October 1994 and was housed at Corcoran around the year 2011. While in custody, he wrote to multiple Maryland BGF members, where the organization was growing by leaps and bounds, both in prison and out on the streets. I then show he was released from the security housing unit and kicked out to Kern Valley State Prison in 2015, where he still resides. There's Ronald Duberry from Oakland, CDC number C as in Charles, 35671. Understand that he was serving a life sentence for a conviction related to a 1980 homicide committed in Alameda County. It was not too long after he was incarcerated, he ended up in the SHU because CDC determined that he was a high-ranking member of the Black Guerrilla family. But in a class action lawsuit, he countered that he had no major discipline problems since 1995, and that the alleged gang affiliations used to justify him being locked down were based merely on his associations and his political, cultural, and historical writings, such as being overheard speaking Swahili. Dewberry became one of the creators of the Corridor Collective during the hunger strikes that forced CDC to revise their security housing unit policies. Dewberry represented the BGF and blacks, while Todd Ashker represented the AB and whites, Arturo Castellanos, the Mexican Mafia and the Southern Mexicans, and Antonio Chuco Guillen for the West Familia and Northern Mexicans. Eventually, via lawsuit, they were able to convince CDC to place them within the same pod, which made them possible to communicate with each other. Men then used their family and neighborhood networks to spread the message, and outside prisoners' rights organizations spread the message both inside and outside of the prison system. In the back of my BGF book, in my other prison gang books, is a copy of the demands that these individuals and their representative organizations demanded, and much of them were in fact met by CDC administration officials. Before this time period, it said that you can only get out of the SHU by 3 main ways: be killed, die, or debrief, which is a process that's been covered several times before, whereby suspected gang members have to basically spill their guts on everything they know about their gang to CDC investigators. After approximately 40 years of being incarcerated, Sitawa Nantambu Jama, also known as Ronnie Duberry, was granted parole in the year 2020. He had previously been denied parole on at least 17 separate occasions. I'll briefly mention a KC, Ace Dixon, CDC number B as in Bravo, 12626. I found him on an old BGF list by the California Prison Gang Task Force, and he was listed as being very dangerous to staff at Soledad in the 1970s. Unfortunately, I lost a lot of my BGF records, so I'm doing this series basically by rebuilding up some of my lost files. I did make a minor error in an earlier video when I talked about the Vanguard comeback and their dispute with the BGF. I stated that Michael Dorrough was involved in that feud. Actually, that was Michael Dorrough Sr., who was the father of Michael Dorrough Jr., aka Al, also known as Zaharibu, who was close to Southside Compton Crip Orlando Anderson. Reports state that in 1996, a group of Southside Compton Crips, led by Anderson, attacked Trevon Lane at a local mall, who was listed as a mob pyro. During this altercation, it is stated that
Orlando Anderson attempted to take Trevon Lane's chain. According to Lane, Anderson tried to snatch it, but did not take it.
Not long after that, famed rapper Tupac Shakur, Death Row Records manager Suge Knight, and several associates of Death Row Records, including Trevon Lane, traveled to Las Vegas to attend the Bruce Sheldon vs. Mike Tyson boxing match. And after the match, the Death Row entourage were walking in the lobby of the MGM Grand Hotel when Lane spotted Orlando Anderson. Lane then whispered something in Shakur's right ear, and Tupac allegedly stepped up to Anderson and said, "You from the South?" referring to the Southside Compton Crips. And Shakur punched Anderson, knocked him to the ground, as the rest of the Death Row entourage jumped on him, beat him, and kicked him. After the fight, MGM security guards and Las Vegas police tried to persuade Anderson to file a complaint, but he declined to do so. Anderson then caught a taxi to the Treasure Island Hotel, where several of his homeboys from Southside Compton Crips were staying. It is believed that at the hotel, Anderson and these Crips agreed that they would track down and shoot Tupac Shakur after his scheduled performance at a local club. Several hours after this fight, Shakur and Knight were on their way to Club 662, which was owned by Knight. And while their vehicle was parked at a red light, a white Cadillac stopped next to them and opened up a gunfire. Shakur was hit 4 times and taken to the University Medical Center of Southern Nevada, where he died 6 days later. And Suge Knight came out relatively unscathed, which created the conspiracy rumor that he set the whole thing up. Allegedly because people knew that Tupac Shakur was considering leaving Death Row Records. Allegedly, when the Southside Compton Crips got back home, they had a big celebration, and soon another bloody war broke out between Bloods and Crips in Compton, South Central LA. In fact, from September 9th, 1996, just a couple days after the Tupac murder, 12 shootings occurred, resulting in 3 fatalities. And in response to this violence, local police conducted multiple raids on the houses of known gang members. Orlando Anderson was arrested and questioned by Compton police on October 2nd, 1996, but was released due to lack of evidence linking him to the murder. A couple years later, Orlando Anderson and his friend Michael Dorrough Jr. confronted Michael Stone and Jerry Stone, who were members of the Corner Pocket Crips. And it stated that Anderson believed that Michael Stone owed him money. A gunfight erupted, which resulted in the deaths of Orlando Anderson, Michael and Jerry Stone, and the injury of Michael Al Dorrough. Dorrough ended up being arrested and accused of committing a drive-by shooting, which gained him a life sentence for the triple murders, that of his friend Orlando Anderson and that of the Stone brothers. But Dorrough said through an attorney that he did not arrive at the car wash intending to harm anyone. He was sitting in the passenger seat of Anderson's black Blazer when the fight broke out, and Michael Dorrough said that he had nothing to do with the battle and only fought back after the Stone brothers killed his friend Orlando Anderson and wounded him. He stated that it was clearly a situation of self-defense, not first-degree murder. But Michael Reed Dorrough was sentenced on October 6, 1999 to 3 life terms without parole plus 49 years for his role in the shootout at the Compton Car Wash. I show that Dorrough was housed at Corcoran Prison in 2011. He was kicked out of the SHU and housed at Solano State Prison in 2015, and then later on housed at Corcoran SATA by at least the year 2021, where he is still housed. Michael Reed Dorrough is presently 70 years old. Lastly today, I'll talk about Fleeta Drumgo. CDC number B is in Bravo, 10837. Drumgo was born in 1946 in Shreveport, Louisiana, and moved to L.A. with his family at the age of 14. After moving to L.A., he got into trouble and was housed at the Preston School of Industry in the California Youth Authority until 1963. Upon his release, he was arrested for attempted murder after he fired a shot in the ceiling during a fight with his stepfather, and was imprisoned until 1966. In December that year, Drumgo and an accomplice attempted to burglarize Martin's Radio Center in Southgate, a city located just south of Los Angeles. However, the pair fled when a night watchman fired shots at them. The getaway car was tracked down to an apartment of a female friend where Drumgo was staying. After he was arrested, he was charged with second-degree burglary and given a 6-month to 15-year sentence. Then was sent to Soledad, where he became acquainted with George Jackson and became known as being a member of the Black family. As I stated, on January 13, 1970, 3 black inmates were killed during a skirmish with whites affiliated with the Aryan Brotherhood. And 3 days after the shooting, Monterey County grand jury quickly concluded that the killings were justifiable homicide, which made black prisoners very angry. Within a half hour of the verdict being announced on the radio, prison guard John Vincent Mills was beaten and thrown off the 3rd tier at Soledad, which resulted in his death. As a partial payback for 3 black inmates that had been killed at Soledad by a yard gunner. On Mills' body was allegedly a note with the message, 1 down, 2 to go. On February 28, 1970, Drumgo, along with George Jackson and Clutchette, were indicted by a Monterey County grand jury for first-degree murder, and jointly they became known as the Soledad Brothers. All 3 then were transferred to San Quentin's Adjustment Center and were put on trial. A Soledad Brothers Defense Committee was set up, led by leftist lawyer Faye Stender, and supported by multiple celebrities and politicians. Eventually, Faye Stender dropped George Jackson from her caseload, and Angela Davis ended up leading the protest movement to free the Soledad Brothers. As stated earlier, Jonathan Jackson then took over the Marin County Courthouse in a bid to free his brother George, Fleeta Drumgo, and John Clutchette, collectively known as the Soledad Brothers. But that mission failed. On August 21, 1971, almost 1 year after Jonathan's death, his brother George was involved in a bloody escape attempt in which multiple corrections officers were killed. George was also killed in that escape attempt. Investigation found out that during that attempt, Fleeta Drumgo had kicked Officer Crescentes in the face several times. Officer Paul Crescentes was one of those killed. In August of 1976, Fleeta Drumgo was acquitted for his involvement in the bloody escape attempt of George Jackson on August 21, 1971, and having been cleared of the murder of correctional officer John Mills. Drumgo was released from prison on August 26, 1976. After his release, Drumgo moved to the Bay Area, but had difficulty adjusting to life outside of prison. Some believe that Drumgo later accused longtime BGF Lieutenant Hugo Pinnell, who was part of the San Quentin Six, for ordering the death of Faye Stender. November 24, 1979, Fleeta Drumgo was found shot dead in Oakland, and as far as I know, that case remains unsolved, but many believe the BGF was behind it. And so, that's all I have for the D episodes. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to share this channel with your friends if you think they'd be interested. And considering checking out my book, History of the Black Guerrilla Family, available on Amazon.com and other platforms. Now, this is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians.
Should I go lax and discipline? In time of strife, refuse my hand, this oath shall kill me. Should I fear any man or be slow to take a stand? This oath shall kill me. Long live the spirit of George Lester Jackson and the guerrillas of Black August, Boy Usi Gaidi Jama.